Good morning. Welcome to the April 16th, 2020 meeting of the Palo Alto Architecture Review Board. I'm Chair Peter Balte. Given the unusual circumstances, I'm going to read a statement regarding how we'll run these meetings. Pursuant to the provisions of California Governor's Executive Order N-2920, issued on March 17th, 2020, to prevent the spread of COVID-19, this meeting will be held by virtual teleconference only, with no physical location. The meeting will be broadcast on cable TV channel 26 and live on the Mid-Penn Media Center at midpennmedia.org. Members of the public who wish to participate can do so by email, phone, or computer. To ensure participation in a particular item, we suggest calling in or connecting online 15 minutes before the item you wish to speak on. For written communications, please send an email to arb@cityofpaloalto.org. Spoken comments via a computer will be accepted through the Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, go to zoom.us/join.meeting. Meeting ID is 381-564-707. You will be asked to enter an email address and name. We request that you identify yourself by name, as this will be visible online and will be used to notify you that it is your turn to speak. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, click on Raise Hand. The moderator will activate and unmute the speakers in turn. When called, please limit your remarks to the time limit allotted. The timer will be shown on the computer to help keep track of your time. Spoken public comments using a smartphone will be accepted through the Zoom teleconference meeting. To address the board, download the Zoom application onto your phone from the Apple App Store or Google Play Store and enter the meeting ID 381-564-707. Please follow the previous steps A through D. Spoken public comments using a phone call to 1-669-900-6833 and enter meeting ID 381-564-707. When you wish to speak on an agenda item, hit pound or hit *9 on your phone so we know that you wish to speak. You will be asked to provide your first and last name before addressing the board. You will be advised how long you have to speak. When called, please limit your remarks to the agenda item and time limit allotted. You can also find this information on the last page of this agenda. To better facilitate public comments at the beginning of the meeting, our meeting host, Vin Nguyen, will identify each person with a raised hand by name or last 4 digits of your phone number and request that you state your name and the agenda item you wish to speak on. If you wish to speak under any item not on the agenda, please state your intent to speak under oral communication. When it is your time to speak during public comment, you will be identified and provided 3 minutes to speak. Any callers with blocked numbers will wait until the end of the speaker's portion. The host will unmute them one at a time. All will be asked to speak. Vin, do we have any public comments? Anybody identify?
Thank you, Chair. Currently, we have 8 attendees, but no raised hand. So let's give them a couple seconds in case anyone wants to raise your hand. Okay, seeing as how there are still no raised hands, we can move on with the agenda.
Very well. Can we have a roll call, please?
Yes, so I will begin the roll call. Chair Balte.
Present.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Present.
Board Member Hirsch.
Present.
Board Member Lee. Absent. Board Member Liu.
Present.
Thank you. We have a quorum.
Very well, thank you, Vin. Next item on the agenda is oral communications. We'll open this meeting to oral communications from any members of the public who wish to address any item that's not on our agenda. At this time, if you wish to speak on an item not on the agenda and you are using the Zoom application, you may use the raise your hand function to indicate your desire. The raise hand button is located at the bottom of your Zoom screen. If you're dialing in from a phone, you can raise hand by pressing *9. This will create a queue. The meeting host will unmute each speaker, display the timer, and alert you when you may begin. Vin, do we have anybody again asking to speak?
Right now, we still do not have any raised hands, so we can proceed with the agenda.
Okay, so we're going to keep moving along. If the agenda next item is agenda changes, additions, and deletions. Staff, do we have any agenda changes, additions, and deletions?
There are no changes at this time.
Very well. Next item is city official reports. Jody, would you care to make that report, please?
Yes, I'm going to share my screen here. Sorry, just 1 second. So hopefully you're seeing the slide here.
Hey, Alex, can you unmute your microphone? I think it's causing a feedback. I mean, mute your microphone, not unmute.
Right.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's still there, but that's okay. So just moving forward, first of all, I want to say thank you everyone for attending this first virtual ARB hearing. We'd love to be holding these in person, but given the shelter in place, I think this is a lovely solution. Regarding the next items that we're going to be hearing on May 7th, we do have the Newell Road Bridge replacement. It'll be a second hearing for that project. We also have 3215 Porter Drive, again, second formal for office R&D building. And then we have 411 Lytton Avenue, which is a prelim. You have seen this project before as a larger mixed use project, but this time around, it's just adding 2 units to the existing historic house. So thank you.
A question, Jody. We had been working on a series of revisions or participating in helping the zoning department revisions to the zoning code pursuant to some of the changes from last year. Has that project been put on hold?
You're talking about the objective standards?
Yes.
Yeah, we're still moving forward with that. So that will still be going forward. We just don't have any dates at this time. But actually, we would like to start doing some subcommittees. And so we can bring that up at the next meeting. We can make sure who's going to be on the subcommittees.
Very well. And then I'd also ask that we put on the agenda for the next meeting. We have some discussion just over how these online meetings are working and what changes might need from the whole board. There's a few issues that have been discussed, and I'd like everybody to just be part of that discussion at our next meeting.
Yes, because there are some things with our submittals that we may need to change, given that we're all virtual.
Okay, with that, we're going to move on to our first action item. This is a public hearing, quasi-judicial for 620 Emerson Street, recommendation on applicant's request for approval of a minor architectural review to allow changes to a previously approved ARB project, construction of a new 2-story, 4,063 square foot commercial building for the expansion of Nobu Restaurant. The project includes a large exterior garden dining area with retractable awning. Before we start, do we have any disclosures to make? Alex, disclosures?
Yeah, no disclosures.
Osman, disclosures?
No disclosures.
David?
No disclosures.
I also have no disclosures to make. Okay, at that point, we're ready for a staff report. Jody and Sam, would you care to start?
Good morning to the board. Nice to virtually see some of you. I will start my presentation second, but I am the project planner, Samuel Gutierrez, for this project located at 620 Emerson Street. The project seeks to modify a previously approved project that was previously reviewed by the board. And I will go over some of those details and a little bit of the project history so everyone's aware of the changes and the developments of the site. So with that said, I will move to sharing my screen. One moment. And as I share my screen, I'm going to ask for confirmation that everyone can see what I see, or hopefully see what I'm trying to share. Okay. Can everyone see my screen yet?
No.
No. Okay. Can everyone see the full-size presentation?
That looks good.
Okay, perfect. Thank you for that. So once again, this is a 620 Emerson address, and here is a visual display of a rendering for the project that's proposed before you today.
Sam, if we can just maybe have everybody mute their microphones for while you're giving the presentation.
Sure. Can everyone please mute? Has everyone muted their microphone? Okay. I guess so. Moving on. So just to dive in a bit into this project, because again, it was previously submitted and approved for one design, and now we're looking to modify that approved design. So the request before you today is an application to change the previously approved design under 17 PLN 00331 for a new restaurant, 4,063 square feet with a green roof. Again, that was the previously approved design. This was the former site for the Stanford Flores building. The project originally involved the Nobu expansion from the 180 Hamilton Hotel. That is still happening. The project did include a new trash room and again, a green roof, backflow preventers that were hidden within some unique opening panels in the building facade. There were going to be some greenery via 2 street trees planted within planter boxes, and parking was provided via the downtown in lieu fees for 5 parking spaces. So again, that's kind of an overview of the previous project. Moving forward, just to give a history of that previous project had 2 ARB hearings. The first one in February of 2018, the second one during April 5th of 2018, where the board recommended approval with a subcommittee requirement for landscaping review. The project was appealed to the City Council, and that was heard on August 20th, 2018. The City Council voted 9-0 to deny the appeal and uphold the director's decision. And the approved project started construction. The Flores building was demoed because they had approved building permits, and of course, an approved project. Then, after the building was demoed, the applicant team revised their project and wanted to bring forward those revisions to the planning department, and those were submitted on October 1st, 2019. And at that time, again, the building that existed, the Stanford Flores building, had been demoed, and that's where construction ceased. So the site is currently vacant, but it is boarded up for security purposes. So going over the project changes, so this is now jumping into the current project before you. The rooftop garden has been removed, and the majority of the restaurant is now within this garden dining area. The garden dining area features retractable awnings that are proposed to be 1,190 square. The overall floor area of the project is very similar to the previous. It's 4,052 square feet with changes to the second floor. The previous project had a partial second floor for a small storage room, and now the current project has a larger second floor. There's also changes to the public seating area. I'm sorry, can everyone still hear me? I'm getting a note that says my internet is slow. Okay, perfect. Sorry for that. So there are changes to the public seating area, which we'll go into a sort of comparison, but they have a much larger seating area with a larger planter box, some more greenery at the sidewalk where the public can engage that. The street-facing facade is roughly 17 feet tall, and the rear 2-story portion of the building now is approximately 25 feet tall. Another large change to the project is associated with this swapping out of conditioned dining area with lots of tables and chairs to this unconditioned dining area within this within the garden, which lowered the occupancy for the site. There's only 15 tables now proposed, where the previous has 36 and additional sushi bar seating. So it's a much more lower capacity restaurant. So just to show you and the public, this was the previously approved design. Here you could see there was some public seating, and these are the 2 planting areas that I was talking about with those little trees. This is the proposed project before you, the modifications. And you can see there's a large seating area here to the right with a larger planter area, mimicking a lot of the same materials as the previously proposed and approved project. This now forms a kind of a gateway feature, but as you can see, it is not a traditional facade. There isn't conditioned space. Again, that's that garden dining area behind this kind of facade-like feature. It does have a recessed entry, as you can see here, and there is a projecting awning that kind of forms a pedestrian refuge and continues over from the 180 Hamilton property. So just to show you some of the comparisons, this is the previously approved project. You can see the large dining area here. It's a fully enclosed restaurant, typical building. These are some conceptual renderings of the inside of the restaurant. Again, you can see it's a quite full restaurant. And now this is the proposed project changes. You can see that this area, which was once all conditioned full of tables, has now been diminished significantly and has this kind of rivery type hardscape pattern where there's tables distributed along that way. And here you can see the conceptual renderings. It should be noted there is a partially enclosed area, that's this area here, for the restaurant with limited seating. And then here you can see the awnings deployed over the garden seating area on the exterior of this area here. This is the previously approved project roof plan. Again, this was the green roof that you could see in the front portion. This would allow the hotel guests something pleasant to view. The hotel building next door is approximately, I think it's 8 stories tall, if memory serves correctly. And then, of course, there was a partial second story on the upper floor of that previously approved restaurant. And now you can see here that the second floor plan is quite different. There is a more extensive second floor, and here's the awnings being deployed over the garden area, and then over the conditioned area of the restaurant, there are some skylights that let in natural light. Here is just a roof plan for reference, where the mechanical equipment has a louvered screen all around, again, to screen the equipment and also help with noise. And you can see another feature that's been added that wasn't previously proposed, which are these thermal solar collectors for water heating and heat capture. Here's a section view and longitudinal view. You can see, again, most of the project site is open here. You see the retractable awnings, this kind of this facade-like feature that forms the entryway, the interior dining area, and then, of course, the building. And just for reference, this is what the rear portion, which would be facing the alley at the rear of the project site. There has been some windows added, as you can see, to that, which weren't previously proposed. And in consideration of the residential property across the alleyway, the applicant has proposed to glaze the windows, the casement windows, with some obscure glazing to maintain that adjacent residential property's privacy. Moving on to the landscape plan. Here we can see a zoomed in view of the proposed garden dining area with some photos of the proposed landscaping. Now, it should be noted, and this is referenced in the staff report, of course, that the majority of the plants are not native, as clearly shown in the plant legend. The native plant that is proposed is here, the deer grass within the kind of large planter area at the property line towards the street, while the others are not native because they're seeking a kind of a Zen garden theme. However, these do include flowering trees and other plants that do flower. So they do pose potential for pollinators to utilize and for birds to possibly nest in. So they do have a suitable habitat aspect to them. And also, most of them are either medium or low water use, as you can see in the table. And the applicant is proposing a drip irrigation system to have more water efficiency in watering the plants. When staff reviewed this, we felt that it did meet the intent of the ARB finding for landscaping overall, as there are native plant, there is suitable habitat, and overall the landscaping is compatible with the architecture and the overall theme of the project. And then with the addition of the retractable awnings, some of the non-native plants can have a partially conditioned space and can be shielded from the summer heat and direct sunlight, so that will help preserve them and maybe lower their water needs. And then for contextual reference, here I just added these photos. These are from the staff report attachment. You can see there's the view along Emerson, and you can see there the Stanford Florist building that was previously existing, which is of course now demoed. The adjacent Category 3 historic retail buildings with some also restaurant components. And then to reference further down the street on Emerson is the Pizzeria Delfina. This is a close example of something that is comparatively similar to what is being proposed here at the 620 Emerson site. There is a restaurant with an outdoor dining area, and that is effectively what's being proposed now. It's a large outdoor dining area with a restaurant experience with a partially enclosed area. So contextually, there's already an example of this, and looking at the architecture of the street view, we felt that the proposal did meet the context-based findings as well. So some of the ARB's considerations are downtown design guidelines, the project design in relation to the surrounding context, ARB findings, particularly landscape, overall appears to meet the intent of finding number 5. And though staff believes the proposed facade is executed well and functions like a storefront facade, the ARB's feedback on the non-traditional storefront is welcome because, again, there is no conditioned space behind the front street elevation facade. It is kind of a portal gateway, but it does function like a storefront. It has these large openings that you can see inside and engage the interior like we would want to see ideally in a storefront, and was found down Emerson as well with the other buildings. So staff recommends that the Architectural Review Board take the following actions. Recommend approval of the proposed project to the Director of Planning and Development Services based on the findings and subject to conditions of approval. And before I conclude my presentation today, I do want to note that in the staff report there is an error. We do list the department as Planning and Community Environment. Of course, I just said that right just a moment ago. It's Planning and Development Services. Even we forget our new name at times. So thank you. That concludes staff's presentation.
Thank you, Sam. I'd appreciate it if all the other board members could also turn their microphones back on. Do we have any questions for Sam? Anybody else? Alex, Ozma, David, questions?
No.
Sam, I would like for you to address one question. I recalled when we've previously reviewed this project that we had requested the applicant provide the location for a potential future restroom on the property. Right now, as I understand it, the restrooms are provided on the neighboring property, but should that land use arrangement between the two properties go away, we felt it was important that the project be capable of having a bathroom. Could you explain what's been done for that?
Yes, actually that requirement still stands. We previously had a condition of approval, and there was a legal arrangement also set up between the city and the property owner for in the event of the interior connections terminating, that the 620 Emerson site would need to create bathrooms for that site, so it would be a fully functional independent site. Within the submitted plan set, there is also that example. So the site will be fully plumbed and ready for a bathroom. Of course, it just will not have one for the guests. It does have a bathroom actually on site upstairs on the second floor portion of the site, but that's actually for the restaurant staff. But if you reference the submitted plan set, there is a bathroom plan, and it does show how it would share the bathrooms with the Nobu Hotel at 180 Hamilton. And then there's also the alternative plan where if the connections were to terminate, where the bathrooms would be located. So that is noted in the plan set.
Thank you, Sam. Do we have any other questions? I see that Alex and David have not turned their microphones back on again. Appreciate it if
Not
you did.
sure if I see where
David.
I turned it back on. Share screen?
You're okay, David. Don't do anything.
No, fine. Yeah.
Alex is back on, and Ozma is going to get good, I'm sure. Any questions, Alex, before we go on?
No questions.
Ozma, any questions?
No.
Okay, sorry to be so literal here. Then we're ready for a.
Wait. I do have a
Oh,
question.
David, you do have a question. Okay, go ahead, David.
I've seen a sort of a mixed view of the way in which you get in from the street from Emerson. And I wonder if the gate, is both doors open in the gate? Is that double door? Sam, maybe you can answer that. I don't know.
Yes, I believe they both open.
They both, okay. Thank you. That's it.
Okay, with that, we're ready for the applicant to make a presentation if they'd care to. We haven't heard from them yet, but Sam or Vin, can you help us get the applicant on board, please?
Sam, which applicant should I unmute to speak?
Well, actually, the applicants have provided a video for their presentation. So I could play that directly. I don't believe they need to speak at this time.
Okay, so go ahead and play the video, and then after the video, if they need to speak to answer any questions, just let me know.
Okay, Vin, as always, we want to be sure that we're timing this to 10 minutes. The applicant will have 10 minutes to speak or present.
Okay.
So let's keep track of that. Go ahead, Sam.
Okay, so I will share my screen with the video, and before I start it, I will ask for confirmation that the screen is being shared correctly. Oh, can we stop? There we go. Thank you.
Yeah, and Vin, can we also unmute Greg, who I believe is the architect, just in case he needs to speak over the video?
Yeah, would like very much to have him have access if possible.
Sure.
Okay, can everyone see the shared screen now?
Yeah.
Can we,
Yes.
hold on one second. Do we have Greg, the architect, on board here? Can he hear us? Greg?
Hi. Hello. Yes. Can you hear me?
Very well, Greg. We're at the point where we'd like to get your presentation. We're going ahead with the video that you provided. Is that what you'd like to do?
Sure. That would be fine. Thank you.
Okay, so let's go ahead with your video presentation. Thank you.
Okay, so I'll start sharing again. Can everyone see the shared screen?
Yes.
Yes.
Perfect.
Hi, good morning. My name is Greg Studheit, and I'm with Montalba Architects. It's nice to see some of you again and good to meet others digitally. Thank you for having us back to present to you a requested design update for our project at 620 Emerson Street, especially during these challenging times. We've been asked to present you with the following, which we feel are really exciting adjustments to the project that will create a very special new destination in downtown Palo Alto. As many of you will probably remember, we've previously had some good discussions leading up to the approval of a new restaurant at 620 Emerson Street.
a restaurant designed to function in conjunction with the adjacent Nobu Hotel at 180 Hamilton. You can see here on the left the previously approved facade and program, and on the right, our requested design revision. The major difference being the transformation of interior dining room into an exterior dining garden. Where previously our facade had utilized a series of large windows to draw attention into the dining area, we have retained an architectural expression to the facade and opened it to a planted exterior dining room beyond. Here are some context photos of the site as it appears today. Obviously, we want to do better. With the help of the planning department, we focused our proposed facade on maintaining the design features that had previously helped support the downtown urban design guidelines listed here. Previous display windows into the dining area are still framed with architectural elements such as stone columns and peer through a decorative architectural bronze screening element. We have maintained a generous entryway that is recessed from and pushed to one side of the facade to help provide visual interest. In plan, you can see that this entry provides a recessed connection with the street. Signage is minimal and tasteful, its location drawing pedestrians toward the new entry. Similar to our previous simple modern arcade that provides some protection from the elements. Again, here in plan, you can see that this element extends across a section of pedestrian seating along the street. This seat is flanked by an outward-facing raised planter with California native planting planned. And beyond the street planting is the garden dining area, framed by subtly lit, chiseled limestone and a decorative bronze screen. Finally, the massing of the facade and its reference to the larger urban fabric is important. Where we had previously aligned with the adjacent building, our facade now proposes to align with elements of the adjacent facades on both sides. These alignments take cues from the adjacent structures, but also render them differently. Taken together, we intend these moves to extend a logical transition between the structures while providing the variation necessary to support an active and vibrant streetscape. Our exterior materials palette is understated as might be expected for such a small facade, but supports visual texture and interest in much the same way as our previously approved facade. It's important to us that the elements separating the street from the dining areas also support these ideals. You can see here some inspiration for this element. We're working to adjust the physical manifestation of the screen to function as a screen which separates interior garden from outer street while also providing visual interest and the same sense of layered spaces to the garden beyond that you see in the imagery here. To provide you with a better sense of the outdoor garden dining concept, we've included a couple of images of this space overlooking it from above. Here you can see the garden taking full advantage of the beautiful California climate. As was our intent previously with the previous rooftop garden, this also breaks up the view of dead rooftops from above and provides some visual interest to hotel guests. And during periods of inclement weather or excessive heat, we have cloth canopies that help to shade the dining areas as well as the garden, helping to even out temperature swings on the planting below. As part of our revised proposal, and especially in these uncertain times, it feels good to suggest a series of features that give back to our environment. We're targeting a number of ways to reduce our shared impact on the environment beyond the obvious provision of green space. Some of these proposals actively offset impacts of the project by using solar collectors to supplement domestic water heating systems, recovering and reusing excess energy from kitchen equipment, and utilizing radiant heating to help reduce reliance on forced air and other comfort systems. Others, such as solar lighting strategies, rainwater collection, and passive ventilation, form a multi-pronged strategy for sustainability. Here, a summary of summer conditions shows the benefits of solar shading, solar lighting, and energy harvesting, as well as passive ventilation. And similarly here, during the winter seasons, solar radiation is welcomed to provide thermal delight. Excess energy is harvested from mechanical sources in the kitchen, which are necessary for the operation, and then used to augment radiant heating of the thermal floor mass. And rainwater is captured and sent to be infiltrated into the garden to the greatest extent possible. We thank you again for your time and the opportunity to show you these exciting revisions. We hope that you've enjoyed our first ever socially distanced presentation. And on behalf of our entire team, we look forward to completing this great downtown project with you all. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Greg. Very nice presentation, although I confess I feel like I'm just getting on an airplane heading to JFK. Do we have any public, let's see, any questions for the applicant from the board? Does anyone have any questions?
Yes.
Osma, go ahead.
So does the limestone material that is the facade, does that match the adjacent building?
Yes. Yeah, for the intent is that it's similar to the adjacent building. We're lighting it in slightly different ways, but the intent is that it becomes a bit of an extension.
So it's slightly different but similar?
Yeah, like I said, it's being rendered a little bit differently because we're lighting it different. So it will appear a little different, especially at night, but it is the same textured limestone that is being used on the adjacent building.
Okay, thank you. And then I had another question. Has there been a structural review of the span across the front? Just to make sure, I'm just curious, just to make sure that potentially down the line, if there hadn't been, there might be further support, the span where the grate is.
Yes, we are. We're working right now with our structural engineer. We're actually, as I guess, taking the assumption that this is going to go well, and we're getting ready to, resubmit documents to the city.
Okay, thank you. And I have one more. I noticed in the renderings that there's two types of awnings. There's like one that has sort of a scalloped appearance, and the other one that has a more flat appearance. And I just wanted to understand the design intent of choosing two types of awnings.
Well, obviously the space that is there is quite a sort of large space. We are, attempting to create this garden dining experience that, we hope is going to be just a really amazing experience. And in doing so, we wanted the garden to be sort of as flexible as possible. And so there's sort of a series of coverage options where we have a long span cover that helps to protect the softscape, and then a more sort of smaller, simpler, maybe to deploy structure that covers the seating on a more sort of day-to-day basis.
I see. Okay, that's all for my questions.
Thank you, Osma. Any other questions from the board?
Yes.
David, go ahead.
Looking at the plan, I note the waving kind of pattern of around the seating in the areas that are sort of into the landscape, and some kind of a connection to the doorway coming from the building. It's a little confusing as to know where people can go within the garden. it's not so much our concern, but maybe you could describe somehow how the circulations can work, because simply coming in from the street doorway gets you into the kind of waving pattern. Does it also get you up to the kind of linear rectangular seating that's up closer to the building?
Yes, there is a pathway that connects the street facade entrance to the rest of the dining spaces. It takes you sort of on a exploratory path, if you will, through the garden in that direction. So it's not a direct connection, but it does take you it kind of raises up a little bit. There's a little bit of a grade difference through the garden as you approach the seating.
So your intention is then to use that waving pattern to get to the other level of rectangular seating?
Correct. Someone can be greeted at the door, basically off of the sidewalk, and then shown the way to their table. Some of the tables, maybe at times out in the landscape itself, kind of along this circuitous path. And then there's a sort of block of seating and a more sort of pseudo indoor outdoor dining space more towards the middle of the property.
Okay, does that answer your question, David?
Yes, I mean, I guess that's it. Your intention there is to have an experience at the garden on your way in, and not just immediately be taken to your directed to your table. Is that the intention then?
Yeah, that's correct. I maybe I should have said something a little bit before about our intent with this whole change. I think we're blessed with an amazing client who sees the benefit in something like this, where we had previously kind of been struggling to bring the outdoors into the dining room with indoor planters and a large skylight. And when we all saw the the site open and empty, there was sort of an epiphany that happened, and he said, well, why are we struggling to bring the outdoors in when we can create a garden that we then dine in the garden, and wouldn't that be just so much better of an experience? And so, yes, you got it perfectly.
Okay.
It's all about kind of the garden dining experience.
Okay, I guess I can accept that, as long as everything is of that kind of quality and experience. The circuitousness of that might be worth doing, and as long as all aspects of the inside kind of function that way, including the kind of perimeter walls, as well as the groundscape.
Yeah, that is definitely our intent. I mean, when I think about other examples, like the Japanese garden at Golden Gate Park, the experience is, exploring the garden, and if you can do that on the way to your dining table, that's great.
In that case, what is your intention for the treatment of the wall of the adjacent building?
Obviously, we'll be doing what we can to improve the image of the wall of the adjacent building, but creating it sort of as a simple backdrop to the garden, if you will. So maybe taking it in a little more of a sort of streamlined, modern kind of ideal of creating a backdrop for the thing in front.
So the texture of it is really kind of a plaster over that surface?
Yes, correct. Simple.
And the trees that are in front of it, which I don't think you ever showed that elevation, I don't recall anyhow. What is your consideration proportion of trees to wall surface there as a backdrop?
I'm sorry, I'm not sure I understand the
So
question.
the neighboring building, there are some trees in the garden that are on that side. I didn't actually, I wasn't able to locate kind of the tree that would be on that side of the interior space, but I'm assuming there are some trees in the garden on that side. It's just landscaped where you really only have ground elements and some trees,
Some, yes, ornamental trees.
ornamental trees.
Yeah.
Have you studied that in proportion to this, that facade?
Not in great detail as far as the planting itself goes, but obviously that will be a consideration moving forward.
Okay. I think that's all questions I have.
Thank you, David. Any other questions? Very well. With that, we'll open the meeting to public comments. Vin, do we have anyone who wishes to address us?
So right now we have 11 attendees and 1 raised hand. 1 second. Okay, so we have one raised hand from a caller with the number last 4 digits 1000. Let me turn on the timer. And so for the speaker, I believe they get 3 minutes. Is that correct?
Yes, if the caller could please state and spell your name for the, or state your name anyway for the record.
Not yet. 1 second. Let me turn on the timer. Okay, so public user with the phone number ending in 1000, can you please state your name for the record and proceed with your comments?
Chair Baltic.
Welcome.
Hello.
Yes, we can
Hello,
hear you
Chair,
fine.
hello, Chair Baltic. Can you hear me? Okay.
We can hear you fine. If you could please state and spell your name for the record. Vin, it's best to
Yes,
hold the timing until they start.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
It's Martin Bernstein. I'll spell the name MartinBernstein. And can you hear me okay? Second.
We can hear you fine. Proceed.
Yes, thank you. So I'm the neighbor to the rear of the proposed project. At my address is 617 High Street, and it's the Victorian house. It's my personal residence, and I support the suggestion or the design that's proposed of the 2 windows on the 2nd floor on the rear, being casement and then being obscure glass. That'll take care of the privacy concern I would have for those 2 windows. So I support the plans as proposed. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Vin, do we have any other people wishing to speak?
We have no more raised hands. Let's give everyone maybe another 5-10 seconds to see if anyone else wants to speak.
Oh, Chair Baltic?
Yes.
I just want to also add that I'm speaking as an individual and not a member of any group. Okay.
Oh, thank you. Thank you, Mr. Bernstein. Yes. We understand that.
Okay, seeing as how there are no more raised hands, we can move on with the agenda.
Okay, so we'll close the meeting to public comments. As we start a discussion, is it possible to get the street elevation of the building on the screen so we can be looking at that as we talk?
Good idea.
I can share that. Let me pull that up. One moment.
And David, why don't we give the floor to you to start with our comments as soon as we get an image up of anything you like, really, but I'd like to be looking at something.
Okay, I'm prepared. Evidently, I don't have to click a raised hand here. I can just speak.
Yeah, you just speak. To all the board members, I'd prefer to keep it more informal and speak as you like with respect to each other. But we'll start with Dave Hirsch giving comments.
But no image yet. Wait for the image.
There we go.
Okay. Well, first off, I think that it is an improvement from where the board was before. However, I wasn't available for that particular meeting, so I'm starting from scratch here. I, some parts of this are somewhat diffused because, you know, you don't look at the whole facade from this view. You're not looking at the hotel itself, which already has a kind of a linear treatment. And that wasn't really discussed. I'm assuming that the linear treatment that's on the base of the hotel sort of matches up with a canopy level here. And the canopy, which runs all the way across everything, then kind of ties that together. However, it's a substantial change in material and color, which I think has a good relationship to the darker versus the lighter stone, the brass versus the, or brushed, I guess it's some kind of textured metal against the textured stone. The proportions there are nice. And the openness, of course, is really rather wonderful to the street. The usefulness of the sitting area, I think if as long as it's monitored so that people who do sit there aren't camping out there also, which is an issue with downtown. But it is, after all, close to the entry to the hotel. So I think our entry to the hotel. So I think that it's going to be monitored, I assume, by the hotel itself. The grading is very nice. The fact that there are sort of trees behind it, I think is a pleasant thing. I'm concerned about the proportion of, as I mentioned, of the wall on the opposite side, and that there's a consistency to the way the interior is landscaped and thought of as a view of the walls, because the side of the adjacent building is up fairly high. I like the fact, of course, that the limestone ends at the right place in the adjacent building. And I was concerned that on some of the elevations that I saw, it looked as if the limestone came forward of the terracotta patterning that's in the adjacent historic building. I hope that's not the case, that it aligns with the actual surface of the surround of the terracotta on that side. As to the, you know, the idea of the paving on the inside, if that's our concern at all, it is to the extent that it comes out from the gateway to the front line of the limestone. I think that should be a really enjoyable kind of experience, seeing the material. It's going to be very tricky for you to get somebody who's good enough to make it work in the whole garden. But the fact that it is a kind of a hand-hewn method of paving the interior space, I think could be quite an exciting experience. In fact, tried it once myself in the rear garden of the brownstone, and it does take a lot of talent to do it very well, to match up the stones and the casualness of the paving itself. And how to do that on the slope when you're actually sloping down and then back up again within the courtyard, I think may cause some bit of problems with the way in which you treat the edges of stone as you cut it to fit into the pathway like that. So it's going to be up to you folks to figure out how to do that very well, because a lot of this kind of a garden and a lot of a Japanese type garden has to do with the detail and the way in which you construct it. So for example, the screening itself, when it meets up with the metal, Osmo pointed out that there's to keep it light is one thing, to keep it structural is something else. And you will need some engineering to do that right, and you will need some careful detailing as the screening meets the stone walls. I'm assuming that the limestone that you're describing, it's smooth surfaces where the woman is sitting there on the top, and that the underneath area is recessed, although I didn't see that detail. Maybe I didn't see it because I didn't look enough, but there should be some recess of the limestone coming across, and the lighting that's under there, and making that work so that the kind of the limestone cap, the front of the seating area projects out and it isn't just flush below, typical to what you would do normally with a base. At least that's my opinion. It should be set back there. So that the seating area would look a little more cantilevered than it does because it's kind of washed out by the lighting that's shown in this drawing. I think the proportion of the limestone is good. It changes the proportion of the adjacent building and carries across the top and then back to the main building, which is a nice follow through. My sort of biggest concern here is that as a sort of a Japanese garden, you know, it isn't really a Zen garden, that the detailing of this and the uniformity of this canopy is kind of overwhelming to me, that it doesn't kind of meet the same scaling as other elements within this whole design. And that I somehow sort of feel, although the dark and light, which I said I liked before, almost would have preferred to have another material and to see the structure of the front. But this is a personal thought, you know, that not one that others of the board maybe would agree with. I would have seen it broken up differently. I would have liked to have seen something like a glass element as opposed to the stones, sort of a lighter element. And I would have liked to have seen the structure of this expressed the way it is. It's a completely different design. So I'd accept what you've done here with this material, but I would have, if I were doing it, I would have done it differently. I would have made the structure all the way through, emphasized the doorway with it, slightly bigger proportion, maybe a different kind of a canopy there, and had a separate kind of a glaze structure in between. And so the experience would have been quite different, and it would have been different relative to the hotel itself, where it isn't really only a foot or so away from the color of the hotel that extends almost as far as this canopy. That's my concern. I think this works. It ties everything together. It's a bit more of a differentiation from the hotel color itself, but I leave it to the architect to think about that as a possible alternative. It is a big change in the facade. Other than that, I think the planning of the whole thing is well thought out with the kitchen in the back and the second level now allowing for greater usefulness for the whole area. The path for serving, I find a little bit difficult, and the path for connecting means that you really have to spend some time there before getting to your seat and taken to your seat. That's going to be quite an interesting arrangement with a hotel where they're going to run this thing as a functioning dining hall. But those are pretty much my comments.
Thank you very much, David. Alex, would you care to go next?
Sure. So I can recommend approval of the project today. I think it's the drawing set and the design have been very well designed and detailed. I had a couple comments. Just one is on, I think Sammy, you had mentioned precedents and it cited the Delfina restaurant. And then there was another one too, a long-standing one, which was the Gatehouse on Lytton. That dates back to the 1975. There was a mid-block courtyard restaurant, and it actually had a similar cable and canvas retractable roof structure too, similar to this proposed project. And it was like a very well-loved and popular restaurant in town for many years. So I think that this can fit in well. I think the proposed stone facade and the alignment is actually very well done. And I think it captures the spirit of the buildings to the left, as well as to the Delfina outdoor garden restaurant. I think materials like the bronze and stone are very high quality. With regards to the native plant finding, I think that this is, it's a special circumstance here where the plants really need to look good all year round, and that's hard for many of the native plants to do. I will add that the flowering cherry trees do provide fruit that the birds will eat. And I think my only comment on the garden would be just the decomposed granite, if it's tracking out to the sidewalk. But I think there are ways of addressing that with like stabilizers. I don't really have any experience with that. And I do see you have like a stone threshold at the front facade, so there is some sort of transition area. So I think that could also help as well. So that's all of my comments. I think the project is very handsome.
Thank you very much, Alex. Ozma, if you care to address us.
Yes. I can also recommend approval of this project today. I do think it is also an improvement over the previous project that was proposed. I remember going through some facade iterations for that one to try and make it a little bit more, amenable to the streetscape. And I think a lot of those discussions have really filtered here. So contrary to board member Hirsch's assessment, I actually think that this update in the facade doesn't feel like a very big change. It feels very, very similar, of the same family of what was there before. And I appreciate that it is an extension of the adjacent parcel in terms of the aesthetics. So I do want to congratulate the designer on this, especially now, when social distancing is so important. It's really refreshing to see a project here that really takes that to heart and sort of reduces the amount of capacity in a really thoughtful way. The only item that I'd like to bring up, and I'd be open if the rest of the board is open to this to review it perhaps in subcommittee, is it seems that the gate, the oil rug gate, it looks really great here in the rendering. The material sample just showed like a flat plate, and I'm sure that was just like a paint or color sample. The precedent imagery seemed like the design of that gate isn't fully designed just yet. So I think that would be something might be worthwhile to review later on, but I see design intent here and it's really great. So it would just be a matter of following up on that once there's a finer point on that. But yeah, otherwise I'm all thumbs up. I'm really excited about this project, really excited about how this could be a really great addition to the city.
Thank you, Ozma. Oh, did I cut you off there?
No, yeah, I just said that's it for me.
Okay, great. Thanks, Ozma. I share the opinions of my colleagues. I think this is an improvement. And I'm very much in support of this project. I think it's important for us to be clear that we do think it's contextually compatible. I think Alex is pointing out about Palo Alto actually having a history of open garden restaurants like this is correct and quite applicable here. I think this will be a handsome addition to the restaurant scene in Palo Alto. And I'm looking forward to seeing this go in. I appreciate very much the continuing bench in the front facade. I remember us pushing for that more in the past, and this seems to be a very thoughtfully, carefully integrated bench, which is going to be quite nice. I think it both meets some sort of a civic need, but it also just sort of seems to fit right. Proportions, the material, everything is good. Alex, if I could, I'd like to point out one thing I'm concerned about regarding the landscaping. I'm in support of this landscaping as it is and do recognize that it's non-native landscaping. And I think it's okay because the overall design intent here is some sort of a Zen garden, Japanese garden type effect, which is in keeping with the kind of restaurant they want to put in here. And I think that's the special circumstance. I'm concerned though that if the reason for allowing this is, as you put it, just because we want to keep up year-round appearances, that seems to be a pretty big loophole for every other applicant in the future. I don't think we quite want to set that as a precedent. Do you have any thoughts about that statement, though? What do you think?
Yeah, it is an issue, but I think in this particular location, being downtown, I think that I think it does warrant special consideration compared to, say, a more suburban site. And then I think the other issue too is that if you have a restaurant, you've got lots of people out there using the space, and that's not, and that's actually going to make it less attractive to wildlife.
Right.
It's just inherently, it's just, they're sort of somewhat incompatible in a very small urban space.
Fair enough. I'm just pointing out that I don't think we want to set the precedent being just year-round attractiveness as a good reason to not use native plants.
No, agreed. And I think that there are, I thought about, native plant substitutions, and I think there are some that could happen, but so I think it is possible, but I don't object to anything that they've got here that they're proposing. And say, for example, like the wisteria that's being proposed on the hotel wall, like there is no native plant that is going to do that, right? We might be able to find a substitution for like the flowering cherry tree, but yeah, there's some of the plants in their list. There are no native equivalents.
Yeah, okay. I'm in support of the project, and I think I hear a majority, if not a unanimity within the board. Does anyone care to make any other comments, or can I have a motion, please? You're not. Any other? Okay, then
I sounded like the one who was least favorable, but in fact, I am favorable to the project.
I think so, yeah.
And I was just giving a thought to alternative, which really isn't our role particularly. It's to look at the project as it is presented and say, is it appropriate or not? And so I would say it is appropriate. I do feel there's connections back to the building that are not 100% appropriate at this point, but it's hardly enough to hold up the project.
If it's any reassurance, David, we struggled mightily with what level of connection was correct. I remember vividly whether the facade material should be exactly the same as the hotel or different. And I think I think the applicant has come up with a good solution, and it was a bit of a process last time, I'm sure.
Okay, I missed that one.
But I guess oh,
sorry.
I was just going to make a motion. If you'd like to do that, Ozma?
I was going to do it.
Go, please. Let's have you do it.
I move that we approve this project subject to the conditions of approval, and also to bring the grate when it is finally designed back to subcommittee at some point in the future.
Do we have any seconds on that motion?
I will second.
Okay, it's been moved and seconded. Does anyone want to address that? Okay, if not, we're going to have a vote. The process for a vote will be that Vin will do a roll call, and each person will state their vote in response to Vin's roll call. Vin, if you could please do a vote for us.
Okay, so go down the list. We have Chair Balte,
I vote in favor.
Board Member Hirsch,
Aye.
Board Member Liu, Board
Aye.
Member Liu. Okay, Vice Chair Thompson.
Aye.
Okay, so this item passes unanimously.
Okay, so we have 4 in favor, none opposed. The item is approved. With that, we'll continue our meeting to the next item on the agenda. Thank you very much to the applicant. The next item is approval of the minutes from March 5th, 2020. Do I have any comments regarding these minutes from anybody else on the board?
I have one comment. Packet page 46. There's a phonetic spelling of a plant, and that's the rhamnus RHAMNUS. And that's all.
Okay, well, we better get that corrected, Jody. Any other comments or corrections? Okay, with that, can I have a motion, please?
I will move that we approve the minutes for March 15th, 2020.
Second by Board Member Hirsch. Vin, if we could have a roll call vote, please.
Absolutely. Chair Balte,
Aye.
Board Member Hirsch,
Aye.
Board Member Liu,
Aye.
Vice Chair Thompson.
Hi.
Okay, this passes with 4 yes votes.
Thank you very much. Okay, moving on, we have board member questions, comments, and announcements. In the past, we've heard from Alex regarding the Ventura public process. I don't know if that's going on. Alex, do you know anything?
So the March 24th meeting, as well as the April 21st meeting, have or are being canceled, and there's nothing scheduled at this time. There was some mentioning of doing it by Zoom, but it's a very large group. So, so I don't know if they figured out the logistics for that yet.
Okay. Anything else?
There is one last thing, is that on the dedicated website for the project, which is Palo Alto nvcap.org, community members can fill out a survey based on the 3 alternate schemes that were proposed.
Thank you, Alex, for that report. Any other board member questions, comments, or announcements? I would like to then alert my colleagues that at our next meeting, I'd like us to discuss just the mechanics of how this meeting has gone online. One issue that has come up already is whether we need to have physical material samples for projects, or if the high resolution photographs staff provided are adequate, or if we need to look at some other solution. If we do continue online meetings, I suspect that will be an issue. I'd like us to not discuss it today, but to think about it, and over the next couple of weeks, be prepared to discuss that and other items just regarding how we're doing this. If we're going to be having online meetings, we want to get the method right. Any other questions, comments, or announcements? Okay, with that, we'll adjourn the meeting. We do have a subcommittee item for board members Hirsch and Liu to pick up, but the rest of the meeting is adjourned. Thank you, everybody.